How's it going, everybody? We're here again for a Frog Week podcast episode. We haven't done one of these in a year since, again, it's that time. So this year, a lot has changed, a lot of unique things to take place, a lot of adventure, and I think for the first time, a very clear roadmap to start with the first episode of Frog Week. So we have so much activity to cover, and I'm very happy to be joined by our faithful guests here, a lot of our regular podcasters, Josh from the All Seasons show, and Amelia, the main podcaster. So some familiar faces if you've been watching the channel, and if you're new, you're going to enjoy a lot of the future content with hiking and pet care and conservation. So we have a lot of unique things we cover on this channel and also on this podcast. But today we're talking about one of the flagship projects that this channel started with, and the progression in 6 years of what's taken place, what's occurred. So it's going to be more of an open forum tonight. We usually have a schedule of what we go with, and we have topics, and everybody's kind of, I don't want to say rehearsed, but we at least have an idea. But this one is more open forum. I wanted to give people an authentic opportunity to just share what their thoughts were on what the project looks like, where it's come from, and what your favorite adventures were watching, or different things like that. So I'll open the floor up to you guys. I don't really know who wants to go first, but let me know, like, what was your takeaway from Frog Week this year from watching a couple of the episodes you got the chance to see?
Yeah, I can go first. Fine. Um, well, it's definitely improving. I like the consistency though with some of the locations, and I know we don't talk specifically on what they are for the protection of the animals, but it's cool to see like the progress of those locations over the seasons and just kind of see how much has actually been going on there. And the one that I think you and I have gone to the most that I don't want to say, a lot's been happening there. And I think it's a direct result of the conservation work that you've been doing and the help other people have been giving you. Um, I also think like from a scientific standpoint, what's that weather station called that you use in that one section? I don't know what you call that. Not a vernal pole, but you have it near that area that you built.
Yeah, the ambient weather network. That's my weather station, and there's up in the yard the artificial pools that I've created for the wood frogs and for use, I guess, for green frogs and toads.
Oh, you still there? Muted.
I think he
Yeah,
froze.
no, I'm here. Yeah, no, the artificial pools for toads, wood frogs, green frogs, and everybody.
Yeah, because it's interesting because like I saw that and I just didn't notice this before, but it shows you like atmospheric pressure measured in mercury, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Mercury. It is a mercury. So you can kind of compare data from like your elevation, your region to different counties that you're going in, and the vernal poles that you are discovering, or that you're doing conservation work and kind of see like what conditions are the best. Like you definitely are getting a lot of data, in my opinion, to try to mimic something that's out in nature and kind of rebuild that. And I think that's why you're having so much success is bringing that science in. I know it's not just like buying stuff and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm using it," but I think it's actually helping. You know.
Yeah, so there's a lot that we could talk about that, but just in a shorter synopsis, the weather cam and weather station is threefolded. So I have my prototype at the house, but it also gets me excited to recreate the conditions in the tanks, and it also gives me kind of a base map of what to expect when we build other habitats and put those in. Because the plan, I didn't talk about this in Frog Week, but the future plan is going to be creating habitats in backyards that we are able to put in weather stations and trail cams and weather cams, so we could get all of that data, um, and understand what's going on. So it's just the start of what, like, we literally got funding from a bank to do a small frog habitat in the location one where the eastern gray tree frogs are. So that'll be the first real field test, if you will, if you don't count the backyard. But I'm really excited to see what the differences are. Like, we want to measure microclimate, we want to measure like um, precipitation, we want to measure highs and lows averages and stuff, because it's one thing to see it on the weather station, like from the airport or from far away. It's another thing to see it in the backyard and know what the differences really are.
So
Right.
what's your process for finding places to install these supplemental habitats and stuff? Like, are you going to have like a form that community locations can fill out if they're interested in being a part of the project, or do you reach out to them or vice versa usually?
That's a great question. So it's mutual and it's usually very hands on. We're not just going to go to a random habitat or random property and just put one up. We want to have a good working relationship with whoever it is. So families like you watched on episode one, somebody leading us to the map turtle, somebody leading us to the great tree frog. Um, we want to have relationships and we want it to be meaningful. So for people's backyards, to have a frog habitat or a pollinator garden or both, we want to be able to access it, maintain it, and conserve it, and also figure out what's going on with the data there. But um, if we put in a weather station, the weather station has to be at least within 300 feet of the house. So that's one limitation for the weather station. But if we're talking building habitat, there's
Is
one
that like a
thing.
legal thing or is that like a signal thing?
It's a signal thing for Wi-Fi. Yeah, sadly,
Um,
if it wasn't, if it didn't have to do with Wi-Fi, trust me, I'd have one in all of these properties. But um, the majority of the habitats that we focus on are on private landowners' property, but there are some that are in either public land or uh, private land that is like really relaxed, and I have a verbal and written agreement by the landowners to be there. So um, there's two places that we normally go that it'd be impossible and possibly illegal to set up a weather station, but a lot of other places it's fair game. It just depends on if we get the funding to do it.
I like how there's a whole episode to the conservation of the pickerel frogs. Before, I think you would laugh at me whenever you and I would go camping by that one pond down the road from you. I always liked the bullfrogs because they were loud. Thought they were cool, but then I know you didn't like them very much. Well, you like them, but not like, oh my God, I want to keep 10 of them in my house. Because they get so big,
Yeah.
sure eat a lot and everything. But I think the pickerel frog over the last 2 years has been um grown on me. And like when we did that walkthrough, um, what was that place? The
International Conservation Center at the Pittsburgh Zoo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and just like I think they kind of really made everybody excited, like the calls and just how interesting they were. I don't know.
Yeah. Statistically speaking, the last 2 years, if we're coming right out of the gate for Frog Week, the Pickerel Frog episode was everybody's most viewed. 2022, that video is closing in on 1,000 views now, which is significantly further ahead than the other ones. 2023, so last year, the Pickerel Frog episode was like climbing and climbing and climbing, and it was the number one episode for like 8 months, and then the last month and a half or so, or it was even longer than that. But it's kind of funny. The bullfrog episode ironically exploded and went from like 200 views to like 11, 1,200 views now where it's sitting. So I don't know. I guess I'm a seasonal channel. So Woods and Forest Media must be a seasonal channel, and YouTube is literally pushing out our content to like hundreds of views per day. When it was like for 3 months, I was getting maybe like 100 or 50 or 150 or 800, but like I'm hitting like over 1,000 views on a lot of the videos per day. I've been following like what's trending, and it's just
Well, I'm sure
crazy.
if people like the previous bullfrog videos, they'll probably appreciate this year's with the fun footage of like the frog and the toad kind of wrestling and being petty with each other.
Yeah, that was epic. I wish I had a better shot. It's so hard. People don't realize how hard it is to film at night. Even if you have powerful lights, it's just
Mm-hmm.
the water, the darkness, and yeah, this toad literally just swam out. It was out of nowhere. He's on a rock. He sees a bullfrog. He swims out to the middle of the pond and just puts that bullfrog in a full Nelson. And you can't hear it in the video, but the frog was crying. The frog was really unhappy, and he like swims to the bottom of the pond and he somehow kicks the toad off, and they both come up and uh, it was just really fun because then the toad started calling and then the bullfrog like went over and nudged him. And I didn't show this on Frog Week because it didn't turn out well with the footage, but after that it almost looked like a hockey check. The bullfrog literally hit the toad and the toad went into the rocks, and then like there was a period of like it was quiet. I didn't know if the frog ate the toad, and then the toad started calling. So some of those toads are just like fearless. They just don't care. I don't know if they're just
Testosterone is a hell of a drug.
Hmm.
I
So,
don't know if they like are just they don't care, or if it's just a couple of them that are just fearless or dumb. Like, but the majority of the toads know, like, oh, there's a frog that eats birds. I'm not gonna go see it. I'm not gonna go close to it. But that one toad, he's just, I don't know. He's like Russell Crowe off of South Park, or uh, he's just somebody who always wants to fight. I don't know. Just reminded me of a lot. It was just kind of funny. Of course, my camera would like do something crazy while I was talking about it, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about that? Josh, you said about the bullfrogs being loud and how they were cool. What do you think about including them now in Frog Week? You know, being the dominant frog, the top predator of all the amphibians in the state and in the Northeast and even in Michigan. You know, that's the dominant frog, the dominant amphibian. So adding that in as a part of the project, I mean, what are your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I don't know why I didn't think of it before. Maybe just because we had so much content to try to, film and work on in a relatively short amount of time. But it makes sense to have them because most people that are getting into this subject, or at least like brushing upon it, have probably heard spring peepers and have heard bullfrogs and the other frogs and toads. They don't know what it is. They've heard it. They don't know that that's what that is. And I was in that boat for a while and still am. For some of them were rare species, but I think the bullfrog is a great way to kind of introduce people to what they already know. But there's probably so much about them and how they live and how they hibernate and what they eat and everything about them that most people don't know anything about. So I think there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of science there. There's a lot of content there. I like them because they get huge. It's just kind of funny, but um, I know they can be like don't they eat other things too, not just amphibians? Like, won't they go after birds or not that that's a good thing,
Oh,
but
they eat lots of things.
yeah, like rodents and stuff if they can get them.
Whatever they can, a small child, you know, my neighbor's dog. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, yeah, they eat small snakes, they eat small birds. The craziest thing I ever saw, I was a kid, but my parents will back me up. There was a frog that was eating baby rabbits. It got three. It was nuts. Biggest
At
female
once?
bullfrog I've ever seen. No, it was like an alligator. It was so big. It was such a massive frog. It would swim and its like hips would kind of move like an alligator, and it would just sit at the water's edge. And these cute little baby bunnies just barely got fur, are drinking. I don't even know if their eyes were open. And then the frog would grab them by the neck and pull them in the water. And it was just like watching saltwater
Oof.
crocodile take down a buffalo in Africa. It's just like, what am I watching? Like, this isn't supposed to happen. I'm a little kid. Like, you know, bunnies are cute and frogs are like cool, but you don't think that a frog is eating a baby bunny. But, um, you know, if I get that kind of footage with the trail cams, I think that would be the cherry on top for any type of episode because, like, for people to see how carnivorous, how aggressive they are, I think is like, it would be pretty sweet. Here we go. We got Drew coming in.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
that.
everybody thinks of like, the some of the big captive frogs as like, oh yeah, your African bullfrogs, your Pac-Man frogs. Those will totally take vertebrates, but like not as many people necessarily realize that about the American bullfrogs, I guess.
Yeah. Another aspect that I did this year, I started, I'd say, getting out of my comfort zone. And I think for the longest time, I didn't necessarily want to take a stance, or I didn't want to give my opinion. And that might sound kind of weird or stupid, or maybe you didn't think about that. But I think this was the first Frog Week where I talk about things from my perspective. I give you my account from the field, or like for the bullfrog episode, for example, I'm talking about how they're like a nuisance, like a raccoon would be, or like a bear would be if you're trying to like raise fish. And I don't know. I tried to provide a little bit more perspective of what I saw. Um, I don't know if we could say politically correct for science, but like scientifically correct or whatever. But this year, I just wanted to make it more personal, and I think that it gave it a lot more uh, personality and a lot more like I don't know. I felt like it made it better. But I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. What's up, Drew?
Going on?
Not much, man. It's been a while.
I know it. Good to be back.
Yeah. So we were just talking about. We just kind of started a little while ago, but
Okay.
what episodes have you seen so far? And you can, even though we're recording, like it's cool. You could say what the names are if you remember, or you could just say like, "Oh, I saw the bullfrog one, or the great tree frog one, or the wild vivariums one."
Yeah, I saw most. I saw the pickerel frogs, bullfrogs, um, American toads, and then I think the wild vivarium ones. One of the two more public outreach kind of focused ones. I think it might have been wild vivariums.
Did you have a chance to see the 8 minute one? It was like about conservation in your backyard. It was like
I don't
it just
think so.
came
Is
out a
that one
week
of the
ago.
earlier ones?
It just came out like recently.
Hmm.
Like I put it on YouTube. So that one would be great if you get a chance later to check it out because it's the roadmap. For the first time ever, I made like an episode that's a roadmap. If you watch that and then you watch any of the other ones, you'll know exactly what's going on or what I'm talking about. But
That's
uh,
cool.
what was your perspective on the episodes you saw this year?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what you were already kind of talking about as I joined in, but it was definitely very apparent that you took that kind of public outreach perspective more into the forefront, which is obviously for anyone who's been following you, something you've been actually doing for a long time is doing all those things, but now you've actually gone ahead and showcased it, which I think is really special. I don't think we've seen that as much before in terms of what you've actually shown to your audience in Frog Week to this point.
Yeah, you know it's
I
wild.
think you did a good kind of like a pre-summary with that first episode.
Yeah, I thought this year I really came into my own with narration. Like I really thought that as the episodes go on, with the exception of the first one because it's the last one that I've made up to this point, I think that the narration kept getting better because I started getting more comfortable and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. Like I'm gonna tell you how I kind of see it. That's why I said words like, "Oh, this is a subjective opinion" in Frog Week, where I didn't do that ever before. I was so concerned even in 2019, I didn't even like the first Frog Week. I didn't even show my face. Like it was a faceless Frog Week. But I don't know. I think it's just come a long way from that to like me saying, oh, like I think bullfrogs could be a nuisance, or like, oh, look at these frogs and toads. Like, this one's my favorite. Like, I don't know. We're taught a lot in academics not to do that, but I think I had been so ingrained with what they had taught us that I just didn't trust my communication and media background at the moment. And this was the first one where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna reach for it, and we're gonna make something special out of this.
I mean, if you ever took a herpetology class with Jim Harding, like I did, he would describe things like baby turtles and stuff as really cute, scientifically speaking, of course, all the time.
I just thought this is pretty funny, but all three of you guys have been in an episode of Frog Week. It's just
Hmm.
kind of funny.
Mhm.
You've all been in it. 22, 23. I don't think I know you guys. I don't think anybody made it in 24. Josh, you might have like scenes that you filmed of me, but you weren't personally in it. But
Yeah.
At least not. Yeah, I don't know, but it's just kind of funny. But yeah, between 23 to 21, you guys were all part of it, so it's kind of funny to think you've seen the progression. You were even there for the filming of some of them, but um, so what was everybody's perspective? Like, what was the favorite episode that you guys saw? I know that you might not have a whole lot of overlap, so this might be interesting. We might get like three different answers to this, or we won't get any. You guys thought it sucked, but I don't know. Like, it's up to you guys. It's open.
I would say I'd probably be split between two, and it would be, and the rationales behind each would be for very different reasons. I would say my first option would be your pickerel episode, pickerel frog episode, just because I heavily respect your desire to attempt to film something that's much harder to find. I think, with frogs, like you're definitely, I don't know if lucky is the word, but you're definitely lucky that the group that you're passionate about is one that's typically abundantly found, especially during your breeding seasons where you can go and you can find them en masse. But then where you are, you chose to really go out of your way, I think starting last year, to highlight a species that is much harder to find, and therefore you're giving yourself a lot more challenges, creating a lot more headaches that you didn't have to. You could have just been like, "Nah." You could have been like, you could have mentioned them in passing in another episode. But you chose to highlight their ecology and how they're interacting with these other species and their conservation implications, which are arguably more pressing if they're less abundant where you are, while you have these other species doing a lot better. So just the fact that you really took on that challenge and made a good product out of it was really impressive to me. Just kind of the work that I imagine went behind that is really cool, and for that reason puts it pretty far up there for me. And then just going back to what you were talking about with the Wild Vivariums episode, I did like generally how, like we're kind of talking about how you're becoming much more personable with kind of tying yourself more to your brand, and you're showing yourself more in the effort that you're making. And you're, I think the job of a host in wildlife media is to kind of be the vehicle to express the wildlife. And you see it in different ways where David Attenborough is an iconic character, but you almost never see him. It's always his voice, but people still love what the wildlife that they see. And arguably, if you just kind of watch those beautiful visuals from those publishings without any voiceover, you'd probably get a lot less out of it, even though it's the same exact things that you're seeing. But even though he's not in front of the camera most of the time, Attenborough really has captured the hearts of a lot of people and brought people in. But then you have a lot more like the Steve Irwins, the Jeff Corwins, the Forrest Galantes, all of them, who they are that on-camera host, and they have much more of a presence to them, and they also serve as the vehicle to kind of promote this education and this entertainment of the wildlife that they're showcasing. So I think that the fact that you've really kind of taken a leap, in my opinion, in starting to do that is something that I have a lot of respect for. And as someone who's seen you behind the scenes, even in person as of last year, I know you've been doing that actively for a long time in terms of actually doing the work, doing the outreach, but showing that off now and how it's affecting people in positive ways, I think is really rewarding and very special to see. So I'd probably be kind of on a seesaw between those two for those reasons.
Well, before Josh and Amelia give their answer, I will say before you got on, Drew, I was telling them how the fan favorite over the last 2 years was the Pickerel Frog episode,
That's cool.
because it just exploded. But then as of late, the last like month and a half, the Bullfrog episode like got like 800-900 views and has just overtaken it by it doubled the views of the Pickerel Frog episode from last year. But um, yeah, I think that that's really awesome to hear. But I wanted to make that comment specifically about the pickerel frog episode. And Josh, I think you were talking about the pickerel frog episode too. You said it's been growing on you. Um,
Yeah,
would
sure.
would you say that that was your favorite episode that you saw, or like what was your take on it?
It seemed really like grounded in the conservation. Just like I don't know how you filmed it, if that makes any sense. It is very like really out in the field, so to speak. I don't know if it was just because everything was at night and it was like long and drawn out, and it just kind of made it feel like you were actually a part of that. It just kind of made it cool. But as far as the pickle frogs themselves, um, I think they're, yeah, like I said, they're growing on me. The sounds are pretty
They're
cool.
gorgeous frogs.
What's
Yeah,
that?
So they're gorgeous frogs.
Yeah.
And leopard frogs might have a little bit more color to them in general, but pickerel frogs are just a little bit different with those nice kind of square spots and the flashy yellow and stuff. They're just unique.
And you're trying to find pickerel frogs in counties that haven't like recorded them officially in decades, right? I mean, that's one of the
they're
bigger things you're trying to do.
so they are known to be there, but like nobody is really seeking them out. Nobody has a handle on, oh, are they actually very common, or are like they're definitely more rare. Even if you go into the ponds, not every pond has them. Most ponds don't have them. So even if they're labeled as a common frog in Pennsylvania, that's what I want people to kind of understand, even with Frog Week, is just because they claim it's common and there's no funding for it, doesn't mean that it occurs outside and you can just walk down the street and there it is. Like they're in very um, specific or niche places, and that could be because of historically what happened. So, if they were used for fishing bait, they might have been wiped out of an entire region in a county, like a small area, because there were people that used them as fishing bait, knew where they could get them. If they were around during timber harvesting, or like whenever farmers were spraying their fields with a lot of more insecticides and stuff like that, and it ran into those ponds, pickerel frogs are more sensitive to pollution, at least from a lot of the government websites saying that. So pickerel frogs are not um, going to be everywhere, but even if they're labeled as a common frog, it's not as easy as it is to find a bullfrog or a green frog, because they're not they're not in the same category as a predator just because they're a pond frog. They're preyed on by those frogs, and those other two frogs populations are increasing every year, so there's more pressure on them, along with deforestation and other stuff. So it's a species that has a lot of pressure regardless on its status, and that's what people don't necessarily think about if we get into the weeds of, oh, why would he make an episode of a pickerel frog?
Did we find them at the turnpike?
Yeah, there was pickerel frogs that were hunting inside an abandoned turnpike in a
Yeah.
tunnel, and so were wood frogs and American toads, ironically. So we've seen three different species in the tunnel hunting, probably cave crickets, and I'm sure the female toads were probably getting field mice. And I don't think any frogs can eat salamanders, but there were two lion salamanders and redback salamanders and slimies. I know there's no way they're eating slimies, but I don't know about redback toxin. But yeah, so a lot of amphibians call that tunnel home. So it's kind of funny. We're gonna have to go back. We're gonna have to see what it looks like after all the renovations to there.
Yeah, it's been like 2 years.
It's been
Was I,
well, it'll be almost a year because we went in the fall last year with AJ.
was I
That
there?
episode's doing pretty well. Yeah, you were there. We found like a dozen frogs that night. It was a great night. All kinds of species. I think we had like four species that night. It was pretty awesome.
Oh, when AJ, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because there was that new massive spray paint thing at the end.
See, now whenever I release this episode, I'm gonna have a card that says like "Return to the Abandoned Turnpike" episode or something, so people will click on that. So that's a nice plug right there. Um, Amelia, of what you saw, I know you had more of a limited time to look, but um, I guess what was your take on these episodes this year?
Um, and I agree with what's been said so far. Like I was saying earlier, I did really like the unique footage that you were able to capture of the stuff in the bullfrog video and the providing all the different perspectives on like, of course, bullfrogs are generally a good thing, at least when they're in their native range. However, they are a pretty aggressive predator, and that can be problematic when they've got cohorts that are already facing pressure from like human-made situations and stuff. Um, the the wrestling terms you were using to describe the interactions between the frog and the toad were just really funny to me.
He gave him a piece of his mind. Uh, Amelia, you're the only one I think who has seen the first episode, like that roadmap that we were talking about. Josh, I don't know, did you see it too or no?
I don't remember.
So, Amelia, I mean, do you think, because I really thought that this was a high emphasis for this year, and I know it's not actually called the roadmap episode, but in my opinion, if you watched it and you plugged
You
in,
might as well now.
yeah, I mean that's a good thing though. Like for people that are gonna hopefully watch this before they watch Frog Week, to know that there's an episode, the very first one that they're gonna watch, they can expect to know like what's gonna happen throughout the whole installment, throughout the whole series this year. So, I mean, how significant was that in terms of like really understanding or providing either background knowledge or more context to some of the other videos?
I thought it was well done. And it's nice to kind of have that like obviously the titles of the videos speak for themselves, but it's a little bit more information for people to kind of make a beeline to if there's particular species like the pickerel frogs or the bullfrogs that interest them the most, stuff like that. Some of the numbers and figures and stuff that you were expressing in that video were really impressive, like the whole number of like all the different counties that you've gone and done outreach events in, and the mileage that you span for actively working on the project, and all the different publications and things like that. That was really impressive to hear kind of the scope of the project as it is in 2024.
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot more emphasis on that. I mean, over 100 animals were saved off of the road from road mortality this year. It's about a 150-mile territory from like west to east or east to west, north to south, like the whole perimeter of our conservation area, 150 miles, over 40 events. I mean, there's so many things that took place. A lot of children that had the chance to see frogs, understand why it's like not necessarily good to touch them or keep them in the like the wild ones, and then to still bring that excitement, whether that's out in the field or presenting it.
I was just gonna say, you certainly love your drone shots.
Oh yeah.
I think every episode probably had some sort of a drone component, and I mean, awesome because drone shots are really cool, especially because we tend to see, I feel like for most species, we tend to see habitat on a very eye level. And it's really cool to kind of get that landscape level understanding of what a species habitat looks like, especially if you, for something like a frog, if you zoom out far enough, you may be getting a population's entire home range, more or less. So it's kind of cool to, we can kind of like look at a map and kind of understand that, or just kind of like in the back of our mind conceptually understand that, but to kind of see that and say, this is the breeding territory, and then around it, this is the feeding forage territory and the overwintering territory, and kind of being able to see that, and especially because you emphasize, your end goal is conservation here, so kind of being able to understand, oh, this is what we need to conserve, not just this pond, but the surrounding forests, the woods and forests, or other adjacent wetlands, and then kind of seeing maybe what development might be in proximity to those places and how it's affecting what you're filming. I think over the years that's been a powerful thing that you've developed. Really, in the past, I guess, is this your second or third year with using drones? I think it's the third.
He's third.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
I think we just talked about the idea, or it just started in 22. But yeah, definitely it's either the second or third. But yeah, it's definitely taken on a lot of new form. But I think it sends a very powerful message, especially for the great tree frogs, because again, if we're just if we're just gonna assume kind of the premise of the project where it's no matter what their status is, they're important and they're valuable, and whenever a habitat's getting destroyed, um, it's one thing to talk about. It's another thing to kind of show, here's the pond and here's a little bit of the wreckage. But when you're showing 400 feet up in the air and there's tire marks from all the four wheelers, there's no vegetation, there's no more water that can gather because all the puddles have been very like thinned out. It's super bone dry because the vegetation was stripped from like mining and timber harvesting. I think it sends a much more powerful message of, hey, like here's a frog. We just literally found that it's in this county. Nobody thought it'd be in the mountains, and we're destroying its home. here's why we should care. Here's a real interesting perspective to show you. It's a tree frog, so let's look at it from an aerial perspective. I think it sends the most powerful message, at least for them, more so than anybody else in the entire project, because we're literally looking at a population that was just found, and we're seeing what's happening to their home, like Drew just said, like the whole scape of where they might live. The trees are coming down, or the trees are growing back, or the pond and the vernal pools, like what's happening there. I really think I think that the drone is one of the most important parts to the gray tree frog story. Ironically, it's very controversial to bring in frogs and toads that are ambassador animals. And even though I show my permit, and even though I have agreements with like rehabilitation centers, it's a dirty thing in Pennsylvania to do that with other conservation groups. So it's almost like I had to choose to become a martyr because I wanted to keep these animals and rescue them. Because then, like, my reputation among some groups is that I'm a poacher, and that I'm in this for the wrong reasons, that I'm a very controversial figure, very polarizing. Um, so I had to be willing to accept that that's how I'm going to be seen, uh, and still go for it anyway. So, like I told you, I started this off by saying, oh, I felt free. I felt like I could just kind of be more subjective. And I think that's because I've gotten away from what the opinion of others who are very well respected is going to be of me. Because what they think isn't actually who I am or how I live. And I don't have to say, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. I don't have to do that. I don't have to get into those disagreements. But just by living and just being me and making these videos, people are going to die with the perspective that I'm a poacher and that I'm horrible and that I do all these bad things for the environment. And then there's other people who are going to go to war and they're going to sing praises and stuff, and they're going to say Aaron's great. So I didn't think that it was going to be that polarizing doing Frog Week. I didn't think it was going to be that challenging, like that I was going to literally not be in the hunt for jobs. I would be ineligible because of keeping these animals, but that's what happened. And same thing with school. Some of the schools wouldn't consider me either because it's dirty. It's like, well, could you get in trouble with the state? And it's like, look, I've got the permit. I've got the guy who literally can come in at any time, and if they're not kept up with, he could take them right away. I worked with that guy to get Junior the American toad in the Wild Vivariums episode. So if I'm doing something wrong, the state's not just going to give me a toad from a college, but um, I don't know. I think that I'm okay with it. I'm at peace of like, look, this is how different conservation groups are going to see me. Um, it sucks, it's a shame because like I'm not going to be in contention for jobs because that's going to follow me. But if you really love what you do, I guess the question is, are you really willing to like die on that sword? Are you going to die on that hill? And the choice was kind of made for me. So it's like, well, look, I already have them. That's already how you see me. So like, I'm going to go do it. Like, and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all out. Like my philosophy, what I was raised on, not just with my parents, but like mentors all across life. It's like, if you do something, go all out, do it, do all that you can, give it hell. Don't just like, don't do it halfway, do it the whole way, like go all out. So I think that Frog Week is starting to take on that personality. We're going to go all out. We're going to get it in depth. We're going to tell the story the right way. I'm going to get up and sacrifice time. I'm going to sacrifice seeing people. I'm going to sacrifice like dinner with family. I'm going to sacrifice whatever, even job opportunities to conserve these animals. It's kind of funny to say it like that, but to be a martyr for common frogs. But that's kind of the box that I got put in, and I'm fully aware of it. A lot of people in the nonprofit don't think it exists, but there's some stuff that leaked that I was able to reveal to some board members to prove it. And, the reality is I'm all in, and I don't have anything to be ashamed of or anything to hide from the public. I have everything that I try to do legally. So to answer your question, I think that I was willing to do it. I was willing to talk about it more this year from my perspective because I think that that's the the personality that I've developed is like I'm doing it. Like I could care less anymore about what my perspective is. Like if I'm doing something I'm gonna go all out to help these animals. Basically, that's the best way I can put it. And I've been challenged. Walk away and you're fine, or keep doing this and we're gonna demonize you. And I never gave up. So I'm 6 years in.
Hmm.
They don't tell you that in college, though. Most people wouldn't do that in college, though. But
You're definitely passionate about it, my friend.
yeah, yeah, there's stories off camera for that. So that's gonna do it. Kind of a interesting way, not quite planned or anything like that, but an interesting way to end off the night talking about all these different things. But realistically, Frog Week 2024 is going to be one of the most dynamic, in-depth passion projects that I've had the chance to create, and it's going hand in hand, showing you what the nonprofit actually is doing and what the media brand's doing and how that's different, how they work together. But Frog Week 2024, the 6-year body of work of conservation for the native species, the native frogs and toads in Pennsylvania. I hope that you have a chance to check it out, starting with episode 1, Monday the 29th. It's the roadmap for the entire series, so don't miss that episode. Even if you are watching this after that, make sure you check out episode 1 before you see anything else. I made it shorter than everything else for that reason, but make sure you check it out. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your friends for more content. The media brand has so much we're doing. We're going to have podcasts coming up. We're going to be doing Wild Vivariums, the new season for season 4 coming up. This is kind of the launching point for that. And we have a lot more to showcase with the hiking show and even the Woods Uncut. We're going to talk about the big tank and the animals going in there. And it's a new day with that ecosystem. And what does that mean? What does it look like? So you're going to want to see the last 2 episodes of Frog Week are the launching board basically for the media brand moving forward. But that's going to do it for this one. But thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.